A lot of excitement about this gentleman who's going to kickstart our afternoon session. The title of this session is From Captain to Coach, Leadership Lessons. I've come to know this guy over the last few years. I've not got a bad word to say about him. 717 games for Chelsea Football Club places him third on the all-time list. He's won 5 Premier League titles, he's won 5 FA Cups, he's won a Champions League, he's won a Europa League. He was captain of the club that he loved so much. He was captain of his country that he loved so much. This is a man who embodied the ethos of a football club. For goodness sake, he's got the best moniker in football. Captain, leader, legend. I don't know who he paid for that, but that is one heck of a nickname to have. I've got a little story about him as well that I'll tell when he's up on stage. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome up the one and only Mr. John Terry. Yeah, that's going to cost you good money for that intro, JT.
What intro that was.
Can I ask this question? I don't want to land in trouble straight off the bat, but were you a Man United fan growing up?
No, I wasn't. I can't believe you put that on me straight away. I thought it was after a nice relaxing afternoon. I definitely wasn't, no.
No, they were interested in you. They were certainly interested in you as a young boy though, weren't they? United.
For me, yeah. I actually spent a year at Man United. So when I was 14 years of age, it was between Chelsea, Man United and Arsenal, who I signed for. And at the time, my dad was a big Man United fan. I think that's where the story kind of come from of me being Man United. And Sir Alex Ferguson would constantly phone my house, checking in, making sure I was doing my homework, which I wasn't, but I told him I was. Speaking to my dad regularly, making sure I was staying fit, that we was okay, inviting us to games. Inside the dressing room, I sat and had lunch with the players. Like, Man United and Arsenal done absolutely everything for me to sign for their football club. And Chelsea were way below at this point. We're talking back in 1994, so a very long time ago. And Chelsea were here, Man United and Arsenal were there. And Chelsea offered me nothing. And the minute I walked into Stamford Bridge, I just knew it was home. I don't know why. You know, sometimes you walk into a house and you go, yeah, this is where I'm going to spend the rest of my life. Chelsea felt like that, which was powerful. And just a quick story. My dad refused to sign my contract. So because I was 14, you have to get an adult to sign your contract. So Chelsea invited me and my family to Stamford Bridge to go to the game and watch and then sign my contract at half-time. My dad was like, you're not signing. Arsenal were offering a lot of money to a family that had nothing a very long time ago. And Chelsea offered absolutely zero. So my dad refused to come out on the pitch with me. He said, you're not signing for Chelsea. And as a 14-year-old, my dad was quite intimidating as well. And I was like, I'm signing. And him and my mum had a big argument. There's a picture of me and my mum who very bravely come on the pitch and signed my contract with me. And we've both got tears running down our eyes. I've got a jacket that's probably 4 times too big for me. And I'm signing this contract at 14. But a special memory that I just love, and I just love that I spent so long there.
I've spoken to a lot of your former teammates, John, as you know, and to a man, they've not got a bad word to say about you. And it comes back to your leadership, and that's what I want to drill down into. Where did your propensity, where did your kind of natural inclination towards leadership, where did that come from, John?
I just mentioned my dad. My dad was a big part in my upbringing and my football and my heritage of football as well. So growing up as a kid, I remember being, this sounds really young, but I remember being like 3 or 4 and 5 years of age in the dressing room with my dad. My dad was captain of his local team that was a really good standard. And we're kind of, I hope everyone's a similar age of me in the room, but do you remember the old smelling sauce you used to get, the white sauce that people used to put on their legs and all of that? I remember that smell and kind of everyone putting it on their legs before in the winter, and the arguments and the fights at half time that my dad and his teammates would have, and the big leadership talks from the manager on my dad in big cup finals. And I was like 3 or 4, but I just remember sitting there and just absorbing it all, taking everything in. I was very good at that. I was a very good listener, and I just took everything on board. And I just think you grow up with that. People speak about leadership. Can you give someone the armband and make them a good captain? I think you can develop and help and support that for sure. But I think the real leaders don't go searching to be leaders. I think the real leaders are chosen, and all of my managers over the years Ranieri, Vialli, Jose Mourinho, my England managers, all chose me. I never chose to be captain, and I think that's a real good sign of how you lead.
Yeah, it was actually Chris, who of course runs Interact. We had a conversation about this session the other day, and he was reminding me about Robin van Persie when he moved from Arsenal, a massive club in their own right, to Manchester United. And he's since given interviews and said when he walked into Manchester United, there was just a different feeling. He felt that Manchester United were built for success. What he said, he didn't necessarily feel that at Arsenal. Everyone that I've talked to who've played with you, John, said that you were the catalyst. Forget, with the greatest of respects, Jose and Carlo Ancelotti. It kind of begun and ended with you. You were the central figure to creating the culture within the Chelsea dressing room. How do you go about doing that? With all the foreign players coming in, how do you set about implementing a winning culture?
Well, I think firstly that this is where I love the crossover between sport and football, actually. I think it's very similar in these terms. And like I said, I was at Chelsea since the age of 14. I'd seen everything. I've washed the kit, as you do as a young player. I've painted the stadium, I've cleaned the toilets, I've made cups of tea for everyone. I've done everything there is to be done at that football club. So everyone that arrived at Chelsea, and again, I said that I was in the dressing room with my dad. So my duty as a 16-year-old at Chelsea was to be on the kit. Now, that was a luxury to me because I was in the dressing rooms. I was seeing all those team talks at half-time and understanding and knowing what it means when Chelsea play Spurs, to the supporters and to the generation of Dennis Wise and these types of players. You feel that, and no one was more Chelsea than me. So anyone who come to this football club understood what it was like from day one. We don't train at 80, 90%. We train at 100% every single day. And if you're not at this level, you're going to fall by the wayside very quickly. We see some real top players over the years, Kevin De Bruyne, Mo Salah, in my generation, that were top players, but were just not ready at that time because our level was so high. So I think in terms of the level and standard, I think you have to drive that as a player because you feel and understand the football club more than anyone else. I think beyond that, there's a level, and at the end of the season, you see me lift the trophy and the players there and the squad of 25 players. Behind that, there's a team of thousands of people within Stamford Bridge, within the training ground, that play a big part and a big role within the football club. And I made sure that when we won as players, everybody felt that and understood what that felt like. And that might sound small to you, but we had a cleaner, Eric, who passed away a few years ago. He was the cleaner, and he was in charge of the building for the first team. When the foreign players arrived, you'd often go up the stairs and you'd be cleaning the stairs. And I made sure everyone knew Eric's name. Now that's a small thing, but actually the players saying "Morning, Eric" rather than just "Morning" is a big thing in terms of life itself. So Eric was important as we were as players. He was making sure that we had the best facility and the cleanest facility in that training ground. Doesn't mean to say that we're more important. Now, obviously, we have to go out and perform, but everyone behind the scenes plays a big part. And I made sure that whether that was a bonus or it was a night out or a dinner, I made sure that all the staff was always there as well. And that's where I love the balance of bringing everyone together. And also, when we lose, they have to feel and understand what it's like to lose as well, which is not a good place to be. Like Mourinho walking around the training ground with the hump, moaning at everybody, moaning at the chefs. Sometimes as captain, you go around and put those fires out and go, listen, he's angry, we've underperformed there, he's taking it out on you, you've got to take it on the shoulders and take it on the chin, and kind of we move on. And I think managing the group was a big part of my captaincy.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk there, JT, about managing expectations, managing the group. Of course, you've got to manage up as well. And I think of the transformational figures in Chelsea's history. I think of two, and that's not to be disrespectful of anyone else, certainly two in my lifetime, Roman Abramovich and Jose Mourinho. Talk to me about your relationship with those individuals and managing those relationships, because ultimately you're a football player, you've got to win football matches, but keeping Jose sweet as your manager, and of course the relationship you had with Roman Abramovich, who was so key to what, of course, Chelsea Football Club became.
Yeah, well, I was petrified. I'm still petrified of Jose now, more so than Roman. Roman was so nice and so kind and had so much time for everyone. There was times that Roman would come down and implement a big talk with the players when we were underperforming, when he had to sack managers, how hard it was for him to do so. And this was translated in Russian as well. So Russian is quite an aggressive language as well, if any of you guys know. And we're sitting there kind of, sweating and nervous that he's going to ask us questions and stuff. So sometimes these guys come in and the leadership starts with them as well, and they drive the standards, and it's easy then underneath that to follow. But you have to manage the manager, you have to manage up. I think I had a really good relationship with Roman and the understanding of the group, of what we wanted. Certain things you'd have negotiations and players will be in negotiations, and he didn't like it, but I like to do things face to face. I'm a little bit old school, and there'll be agents coming in and players' contracts, and I would see their dip in form and their dip in personality around the training ground. And for me, I'm like, I need to nip this in the bud instantly. So I would get Peter Kenyon. Peter Kenyon was the best kind of sporting director I've seen in football. I would pull Peter and say, I need to speak to you and Roman. And he'd be like, he doesn't want to speak about contracts. I'm going, you need to get this sorted. Didier's contract needs to get sorted. I don't really want to know the numbers. That's down to you guys to crunch. But surely you can sit in a room and have a grown-up conversation rather than waiting 2 or 3 weeks, because in the space of 2 or 3 weeks, you're talking 4, 5, 6 games. That's a big difference over the course of a season. So it's just little bits like that of knowing when you can go and speak to them people, and also knowing when you can't speak to them people. And there is times when you really can't, because they're in charge, and that's very clear at certain points.
And Jose Mourinho, his legacy, his force of personality, it lives on, John. What is he now, 62? Recently took over at Benfica. He's returned home, as he said. What is Jose like? A lot of fascination about him, John. Is there one particular incident that kind of crystallises and underlines the character that he was?
Yeah, I absolutely love him. The best manager by a long, long way that I've ever had. I think the charisma that he first had when he first arrived, the big interview that he's a special one and all of that, he had that in abundance in his team meeting. So when you're listening to somebody like that, you know that you're going to be very successful and you're going to win because you follow. Now, great leaders set the great example, and he does that, and we then follow beyond that. But just a couple of stories, like he FaceTimed me the other day, and I mean it, he petrifies me, scares the life out of me still today. He FaceTimed me the other night, and I think I'm watching Entourage with my wife, we're watching a series, and it's ringing up, and I'm puffing the pillars up behind me, and I'm moving cushions about. My wife was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, the cushions have got to be right. It can't be out of place because he'll go mad." And I'm just so nervous of him, but in a good way, like I fully respect him. But just on the training pitch, so we signed Diego Costa, Cesc Fabregas a few years ago when we were playing, and it was their first training session. And this is kind of typical Mourinho. Now, we're doing a session of playing out from the back and playing into midfield. Now, he's created a session where you can't play out and you can't play through midfield. So he's set up, he knows exactly what he's doing. At the time, you don't really know and understand that. And me and Gary Cahill are the 2 defenders. And me and Gaz are trying to find someone in midfield. We can't find the space. We kept giving the ball away. The session kept breaking down. He stopped the session. He said, "You 2 can F off. I'm going to go and sign 2 world-class defenders, and you 2 can get out of this football club. Not good enough. That's not a good enough standard for this football club." And he was going crazy at me and Gaz. And me and Gaz are looking at each other going, I'm the captain, and he's the vice-captain. And we're like, oh my God. He mentioned Varane, he was going to sign for 50 million, and someone else. Varane was like top back then as well. Now, after this, me and Gaz are like really annoyed. So we start like running the ball into midfield. We end up finding these passes and telling people to come in the space so we can find the pass. We start kicking lumps out of everyone. The session goes from being a real organised session to a hectic session. Everyone's kicking lumps out of each other. And it's not till later that you walk off the training pitch and he comes and puts his arm around me and Gary and went, "That's why you're my captain and my vice-captain." And it's like years later, you look at that and go, at the time I'm thinking, why is he having a go at me and Gaz? We're trying to do the right thing. And it was like he was sending the message to Diego Costa and Cesc Fabregas that he's the man in charge. And that was very clear from everyone. But just little bits like that, he'd send you a message late at night going, "I love you, you're the best defender in the world, you're better than Titus." But he would just send little bits like that. And he just made you feel, 7 foot tall, and he's just a great man. He gets a lot of stick, but he's a very personable guy, which is one thing that he's not credited for.
Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of players, and Jose himself has said more recently that the mind games as he would call them, and he's actually been compared to Eddie Jones, the former England rugby union coach. The mind games that he plays, it actually necessitates that you are of a certain character. And he's admitted, Jose, that he's got it maybe wrong in other ways with younger players, a new generation. At Chelsea, though, it was a team of what I would call kind of proper men, in the sense that you guys are taking responsibility. There's an accountability for your performance. That doesn't work everywhere.
No, it doesn't. I think we've seen that when he's left Chelsea and gone to different football clubs. We were lucky at Chelsea as well. I was the one with the armband, and I get a lot of credit for this as well. But I think my teammates as well deserve a lot of credit. Like Frank was my vice captain, who led in a completely different way to what I led. Like I said before, there's different ways to lead. I was one by example, so I was always the first in training, last out of training. That the person that gave it absolutely everything in every single session, everything I'd done. Frank was a great speaker and could hold a really good conversation in a room and deliver a message to the players that sometimes we needed. It wasn't always the anger and the aggression. Didier would speak on behalf of the African players. Now, managing different groups, we had myself, Frank, Peter Cech and Didier Drogba, Michael Ballack. We was all captains of our national team as well, which was incredible. So my voice, if I'm the one speaking week after week after week after week, it can get a little bit tiresome. And the importance of having other people knowing when to dip in and dip out of that, and me saying to them, we need you today, not me. And them stepping up at that time was really important as well. And I think Jose was very clever in the team he put together, because for us, we were running the dressing room. And I think over the years, we got a lot of stick for kind of being in too much control of the football club. We wasn't. We controlled the dressing room. Now, if you turned up late, I would deal with that firsthand, instantly. If I wasn't in the room, Frank or Didier or Peter would deal with it instantly. We didn't accept it from anybody, from ourselves or nobody. And Jose could then focus on what he needed to focus on, was putting the best team together, putting the best training sessions. Roman never got called down to the training ground because people were being late and things were happening that shouldn't have been happening. It was very well structured, and I think Jose was very clever in the team he put together at Chelsea.
Of course, you don't need to follow Chelsea closely to know you've had a lot of managers over the years, John. I wonder, with the force of personality, not just from you individually, the strength of character in that dressing room, a new manager coming into that environment, it's sink or swim. I imagine it's incredibly daunting, even for the best. Your Goose Hiddink, your Carlo Ancelotti's, Luis Felipe Scolari, for goodness sake, a Brazil World Cup winner. My goodness, they've all come into that football club. Did you have to bend your principles, your leadership style, to suit their style? Or was that a non-negotiable? What you see is what you get with John Terry.
Yeah, listen, I was fully respectful in terms of all of my managers, yeah, and would know that there's one man in charge and that's them. I think they trusted me to run the dressing room, and they was comfortable with my principles and how we done things. And we made that very clear when people come in. And also, they don't want to be dealing with stuff like that at kind of dressing room level, fights, arguments, fines for people being late, and all of this that we was on top of at that time. But it was difficult going through so many managers, because you have such a relationship with managers. And Roman was cutthroat. Like, you look at when Mourinho was sacked, like, players were in tears in the dressing room. Ancelotti comes in, wins a double. He then goes, somebody else comes in. But again, it's the importance of the group to get together and call a meeting and go, this is on us. They've been sacked because of us. Now, a lot of people don't really see that side of it, that the manager takes all the stick. But that's 9 times out of 10, that's the players underperforming. Now, there's been some poor managers, Rafa Benitez being one of them. If there's any Liverpool fans, sorry. But he was one that kind of didn't click with straight away. He see this as a battle with me, that he wanted the dressing room and all of this. And it was like, okay, I'd seen him work. I'd heard really good things about him at Liverpool, tactically and all of this, but we just didn't click. And that was the only manager in my whole career that I didn't get on with.
And I've heard some stories about Rafa as well. We talked about a theme yesterday. How crucial is it to be honest? Honest in the dressing room, being able to look a teammate, a colleague in the eye and be honest. Whether it's good news, it's easier to be honest. Bad news, delivering bad news. That's so vital to be an effective leader.
I think so. And I look at the best, like Ancelotti and Mourinho being my 2 best managers. Mourinho, like I've said, in terms of the whole package was excellent. Ancelotti in terms of that personal, how to deal with players and hold conversations with players. And you said it, Chris, as well, the honesty from both of them. Like, you would go to Jose and ask why you're not playing, and he would just say because you've been rubbish, basically. And that was it. It was very black and white. He'd have videos ready to show. He'd turn around and go, this is why, this is how you trained, this, you've not been good enough. You was at fault for this goal against Man City, etc., etc. And you go, okay, at least I know where I stand. Okay, will I get back in the team? Well, it depends how the other person does. So it's very clear. Whereas Carlo would get you in his office, he'd light a cigarette. You could have one if you wanted one. He'd have it. Honestly, he'd have a bottle of wine. You could have a glass of wine, and you'd sit there and you'd talk as though you was talking with your mates, or as though you was in the dressing room with him. So in front of everyone, he was the man in charge. But you could have a real detailed, in-depth conversation with that. But the honesty was there from the best ones, and I think the best leaders or the best people in charge are never afraid to be honest and make those difficult decisions. And one of them said to me many years ago, if you want to make people happy, sell ice cream.
You're right. I've spoken to you about the highs and lows, John. You know where I'm going with this. And you've said it to me before, it's out there. The biggest low, Champions League final, Moscow 2008, well documented, to the biggest high of 2012, Chelsea becoming the first London club to win the Champions League. And I remember at the time I said to you, wow, really? Because of course you were suspended. You weren't in that final. And you said, yes, Chris, because Chelsea runs through the veins. Despite
I played the full 90 minutes. I played.
You probably, yeah, exactly, on the touchline. But compare and contrast the two emotions, John. 08 and the driving rain of Moscow to Munich of 2012, Chelsea finally climbing their footballing Everest.
Well, I think firstly, let's talk about Moscow 2008. So by far the worst time in my career, the worst experience and the worst few days I've ever had. You know, it's a lot more open now, isn't it? People talk about the mental health side of things and stuff like that. I was in a bad place. I didn't know it then because it was very much how I grew up. It was like, you can't show your feelings, you can't. But I wish at that point I could have gone and spoken to somebody. So the Champions League, first and foremost, is the most difficult trophy to win. We had, in 05-06, we get knocked out against Barcelona. We had the penalty in Moscow when I missed. 09-10 when Iniesta scored in the last minute. And in 2012, which we'll come to shortly, but I'm digressing, sorry, off of here, I go back to 08. So again, the most difficult moment, and what people don't see is that Didier Drogba got sent off in that final, and Didier was supposed to take the fifth penalty. Now, I was always number 6, Kalou was number 7. So Didier gets sent off in extra time. If Didier doesn't get sent off, I don't take my penalty. Didier scores for sure because that's what he does. And I'm probably sitting here with 2 Champions Leagues rather than 1. And just a real tough experience. I think you don't feel and understand this at the time. I think you need to go through experiences like that to understand the hurt. Like watching Man United lift that trophy that year and on the pitch that day was the most difficult. Even when I see it today on the TV, like the fire and the anger in my belly will never go away. I didn't sleep properly for about 2 years after that, waking up in the middle of the night, thinking that I was kind of in that situation. I'm just going up to take the penalty again and realising I've missed it, and that was kind of a year and a half ago. Those moments, people don't see that side of it. So the drive to then go on and win it in 2012 and being knocked out by an Iniesta last goal in the last minute. In 2012, we was an ageing squad. Didier Drogba was 35 years of age in his last year. He left the club after that. I was at the back end of my career. Frank was as well. So it was probably our last chance, and Bayern Munich were the best team by far. They were the favourites going into it. They were miles better than us, but somehow we managed to do it. And I still don't know how today. And I didn't play a minute of that because I got sent off in the semi-final very stupidly against Barcelona, which is a place you do not want to get sent off and leave your teammates with 10 men against the best team in the world, which I've done. But we managed to get through that. So I missed the final, but I was in my full kit. Now, UEFA told us that they didn't want anyone in their suits after because it looks a bit funny. If people are in their kits and their suits, it looks a bit funny. So everyone in their kits. So I did, and I went a little bit further than that. I put my shin pads, my boots, the tape, the armband, I had everything on. So I went for the whole thing. But my kids look at it today and go, "Oh, Dad, you played in that?" And I go, "Yeah, it was a tough game, that was. It was a tough game."
But your career high, despite the fact, and that's the selfless nature.
By far the best experience. Even though I didn't play, seeing my team, Chelsea, from the age of 14 win it was the best by a very long way for me.
Captaining your country, does your leadership style have to change? Obviously, you're part of a culture at Chelsea Football Club. Chelsea, to your words, John, is your club. England is not. Yes, England's your country, but the national team setup, I come back to that word leadership again. Did you feel comfortable in your skin as England national team captain?
No, I didn't. And the reason for this was a few things. It's very different going into a Chelsea dressing room when it's your club and you feel and understand it. You see things and you make a change and things are done instantly overnight and you're in a better place to follow it. With England, there was a lot of big personalities that had been there for generations and generations. I'm talking like the older generation, that we were going to games. And again, this is a small thing. It's really difficult when you say these kinds of things. People don't think, the players, who do they think they are? They want to be flying in first class and all of that. But with Chelsea, we would fly private and we would go to these games with the best leg room, where you can have a stretch on the way to the game. With England, you'd get on the plane and all the older directors would turn left into first class, and the players, whether it was a 2-hour trip or a 4-hour trip, would turn right into business. Now, that sounds like a small issue, but for me, when I was England captain, I was the first person to address that. And I'm going, you haven't got a game to go and play when we land tomorrow, so that needs to change. We need to flip it, which didn't go down well at all. Guys that have been there for 50 years. And eventually we managed to change it, but you're kind of a year or you're 8 months into that. And I found it really frustrating with all of those bits. You kind of come away from England, you focus back on Chelsea, and you kind of leave stuff with the FA to make things happen, and things don't get done because they don't want to lose their roles, and they love being in first class and all of that. The food, the hotels, the kind of CEOs and the directors would have the best rooms. The players would have kind of single beds. Real small things, but honestly make a big, big difference in terms of players. Now, when you go there, like when I go to Chelsea, you get on the plane, the travel was incredible, which was a credit to Roman for doing that. The hotels were first class, the rooms were excellent. Everyone had exactly the same, all of the players. No one had a hierarchy because I was captain, which was me, and that was how it should have been done. When you're an elite athlete or you're an elite company and you're going into a building going, wow, everything's top here. This is the level we have to perform at.
Because then there's no excuses for you not then doing your job.
There's no excuses. And I found it really, really tough. And I'm sure kind of captains before me kind of felt the same and after me still feel the same. But as well, listen, I left a really good legacy as England captain. So a big thing back in the UK that we used to get paid to play for our country. Now, not a lot of money at all. If we won, we'd get £1,500. If we drew, we'd get £1,000. If we lost, we got £500. So the first thing I'd done as captain when I got given the armband was to scrap that, because it was always something that the press would throw at the players. You don't play for England because you get paid £1,500. You get to play for your country because you love your country, and that's what you dreamed of as a young boy. So we managed to agree with the FA that the total over the course of the year was £2 million. So the FA would donate 2 million, so it would be a total of 4 million that we give to charity, and they still do today. So there's some frustrating bits for my captaincy, but there's a legacy that you can leave as well, and that was one of them, that £4 million every year gets donated by the players in the FA that goes to charity and some fantastic causes.
I think that deserves a big round of applause. Love that. Right. I did have a lot of you asking, are we going to get an opportunity to ask JT some questions? So we're going to do just that, right? I want to make sure that I'm back here in this role next year, so I've got to keep everyone happy with timings. So, you've got a question for JT, let's get your hand up and we'll get a microphone over to you. To the lady down the front, thank you.
Hi, so first of all, thank you for being here. This is a privilege talking to you right now. So a question about your the psychological impact that happened to you after 2008. So the first time you went back into the pitch, how was it? How did you feel? And with that, what advice would you give athletes nowadays, elite athletes with that type of pressure? What advice would you give them?
Great question.
Yeah, very good question. I wasn't in a good space. I think the best thing that happened to me after that game was that 3 days later, we had an international game with England. So I'm now at the hotel, sitting across, having dinner with Rio, Wayne Rooney, the last people that I want to see after losing this game. And they're happy. I'm still in bits, right? But for me, it was like we played a game at Wembley 3 days later. We played against America. So I had no decision at that time to kind of go, I need to step away here. Probably wasn't in the space. I wasn't comfortable to even come out and say that. I'm honest enough to say that. I wish I would have spoken to someone immediately, but I didn't really know that. I think football now gives players the opportunity and the platform to be really comfortable in those decisions. If people are uncomfortable, they're happy to show their emotions. And I think that's a real good thing of where we sit today in today's sport and world. But we played America 3 days later. I scored a header from outside the box. And I was in a worse place after that because I'm like, why have I scored then and missed the penalty? Why did it rain that night? I've still got so many questions that are unanswered. And Chris, I've still not even spoken to anybody today about it. So it's probably a topic. So thank you to your question. I think when I get back to London, that's the first thing I'm going to do.
It is.
Hopefully he's not a Man United fan.
Thank you. Great question. Right, we've got a question up the back.
Thank you again. So I have a question. Normally in a regular job, right? You go to the office and the people working there they don't think they are bigger than the firm they work for, hopefully, right? While in football or other sports, you often deal with locker rooms or a set of people that might feel they are bigger than the club or, let's say, the company they are working for. So how do you manage a team like that with such big personalities that go even beyond the company itself, the football club or whatever the entity?
Yeah, that's also a very good question. So I think, again, nowadays they call it a leadership team. Back then, like I said, we had myself, Frank, Didier and Peter Cech that were pretty much managing the team. It was a leadership team, but we didn't know that at the time as well. When you get certain people in the building that are incredible at their job, and I'm referring to a guy called Eden Hazard, who was an unbelievable player, the laziest player and the worst trainer you could ever come across in football. So now you go in, okay, now you have an issue. So the issue is that, okay, why is it okay for him not to train well on the level? So what we done is we got the whole group together, and Frank had gone by this time, but I got the group together without Eden and said, listen, on a Saturday, this guy can win us a football match and can win us the league on his own. He's that good. But Monday to Friday, honestly, he's the worst trainer ever. His diet was terrible. He ate the worst food. And for us to manage that within that group of going, he's the best player we've got in this building, so we need to make a collective agreement and sacrifice today that we need to work a little bit harder on a Monday to Friday and also on a Saturday. So a Saturday, he's not going to track back and track the right back. So as a left-sided midfielder, you might need to come across a little bit more on the left back. You might need to work a little bit harder. But I'm telling you now, on a Saturday and at the end of the season, when you give this guy the ball in the attacking terms, he will go and win us the game. And everyone in that room brought into that idea. And Eden didn't know that. Eden was just being Eden and doing what he was doing, being very lazy. But he was so exceptional. So I think at times you have to adjust. So you can have your ways and your beliefs of this is how we're doing it. But there is certain people that are that good and are geniuses that come in and go in, you need to be a little bit flexible and need to understand that as well. So I think being flexible, I think was something that I learned as a captain. The older I got, I think probably in the first 4 or 5 years, me as captain, I would have been, no, that's not acceptable, you're out. And that happened with other top players that arrived as well. But I think over time you learn to grow in your role as well, and you understand that everyone's got a different way they look at stuff and how they do that.
Given the region that we're in, John, be honest with us here. Mohamed Salah was at Chelsea Football Club. A lot of people still forget that. Kevin De Bruyne, the same. When you saw Mo up close and personal when you did, still a young man as he was then, coming from Swiss football, did you honestly look at that man and think he is going to become one of the greats of our game?
Absolutely not. Not by any stretch of the mile at all. And De Bruyne was the same. And they both come in at a real difficult time as well. So they come in when Chelsea were here. And these guys were on this journey of being excellent. Now, did they show signs of that? Yes, but I wouldn't say I was blown away by either of them when they first come in. When Hazard first walked in the building, it was like, wow, this boy is incredible. When those two walked in, that's no disrespect to them. I'm happy to sit here and say, I got it completely wrong with these two. If you'd have said to me you could have brought them both for £1 million at the time, I'd have gone, you're wasting your money. Honestly, but these guys, and to talk about elite mentality, and these guys, their mentality and how they dealt with it, and went on and went, I'm going to show you and show the rest of the world what I can do, just goes to show how top they are. Mo is an unbelievable player and still doing it incredibly well, and every time he takes his shirt off, I'm very jealous as well.
You and me both, my friend. Right, couple more questions out there on the floor. We'll get one more down here, and then we will wrap things up.
Hi, my name is Munir, and I'm the head coach for the women's soccer team, New York University. The question I have, you've been coached by a lot of coaches, a lot of great managers. So which coach or which manager influenced your coaching style the most?
Good question, and good luck to you and the girls as well. For me, would be Mourinho. Would be, in terms of how he works, when he first arrived at the football club, to see how he worked. Like, I prided myself on, like I said, as captain, being the first one in. When he arrived, I arrived and there was a car in the car park space. And I was like, who's this? It was him. He was in before me. And it was like an ongoing battle with me and him. So first and foremost, he was in bright and early to come in and set up and making sure that the training pitch and everything was ready. So in terms of seeing him work, he was by far the best and the most detailed that I've come across. I just think as well, I think if you want to be a young coach or a manager or a coach in any sport, I think the important bit is to be 90% you and take a little bit of the people you like as well. So me trying to be Jose Mourinho as a coach or manager is impossible. You can't be like those people. What you can do though, you can prepare like Jose Mourinho, because we can all do that. We have the ability to do that. You can arrive early in the Mourinho if you want, because you have the ability to do that. Now that's on you. Can you coach like Mourinho? Probably not. But you know what? You have your style that clearly worked with the girls. I have my style that how I want to do things as well. And I think when you do things, I think leadership in football is you're gonna win, you're gonna lose some. But I'd rather lose when I'm doing it my way. Because if anyone points the finger, it's me. The responsibility is on me, and I'm very happy with that. And I think I'm comfortable in that. So my advice would just be 90% you and a little bit of everyone else.
Love that. Right, I'm going to make this the last one. It's a great one, even if I do say so myself. If you were to distill two pieces of advice, you've been in the footballing realms, but of course from business, other industries as well, John, you've maybe picked up these bits of advice along your own journey. What two spring to mind that are, I guess, transferable skills, ultimately, transferable pieces of skill that people can leave this room today and implement in their own lives?
I think just life skills for me. Like, I'm working in the academy at Chelsea now, and I think a life skill with this generation, they're a different generation to me, so they see the world differently. But life skills in terms of, like I just spoke about then, of turning up, not on time for work. If you're due to be in work at 9 o'clock, don't turn up at 9 o'clock. Turn up at 8 o'clock. See what's happening in the world at 8 o'clock in the morning. Turn up in the office and make the people around you go, this is the standard. You're getting in at 8, I need to get in at 8. Why? We don't know, but now me and you are both in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we're talking about what we're doing for the day. So before people have got in, you've sent 5 emails and you've spoke to someone in New York, or you've had a conversation with a player about the tactics the weekend as well. So now, straight away, we're off to a great start. We're ahead of everyone else. So one manager said to me that when the rest of the world is asleep, be awake. And that just sticks with me as well. So it's a life skill. So to do things at your full potential, whatever it may be, I think is probably the best advice I could ever give.
I love that advice. I'm just up at 4 a.m. watching nonsense TV is what I'm doing, John. Listen, it's always great to see you, my friend. Good luck. I know you're involved in the Chelsea Academy. I know you do an awful lot. Great causes around the globe as well with the JT Foundation as well. So thank you so much for being here in Abu Dhabi. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, guys.
Mr. John Terry.
Thank you.